Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 3 of your course. I hope that week 2 has gone well. Thanks for the emails that you've been sending, and apologies for my tardiness in responding to some of them. Maybe just 2 points to clarify before we go on. There was a duplication of dates in terms of the due date for your PowerPoint presentation. So to clarify, it's due on August 9th at midnight in each of your respective time zones. So due on August 9th. The other point was that I was meant to send you some PowerPoint presentations of a cohort from a year gone by, which I have not done as yet. I will attempt to send that later today. So I thought we needed to get that out of the way. Also, maybe a reminder that each week we start with this introductory video, which I'm hoping is somewhat useful. Then to review the material for week 3, it's 3.0 to 3.7, chapter 3, of course. And to continue to work on your PowerPoint presentations and to post that, like I said, by August 9th, midnight in each of your respective time zones. Also, maybe just to say to you that when you're thinking about strategic peace building, and like we spoke about in week 2 and like we're going to talk about now in week 3, we need to think about that in the broad context of the 7 aspects of strategic peace building that we spoke about initially. Also, it might be useful to think about a conflict that you have studied, are familiar with, know a little about, whether it's in the Balkans, the Middle East, Israel, Palestine, parts of Africa, Northern Ireland with the IRA, or whichever conflict that you're familiar with. So when we talk about insiders, outsiders, conflict transformation, it really might be worthwhile to think about a particular conflict when you think about each of these ideas. So what do we cover in week 3 really quickly? One is we look at conflict transformation. So we go beyond conflict resolution. Like you might know, there's a huge critique of conflict resolution in the 90s. One is conflict resolution is criticized for having assumed equity between partners, for sort of dividing issues and tackling them separately. But now we move from talking about conflict resolution to conflict transformation. We also talk about in week 3 about organizing people and organizations for peace building. And we talk about a role for outsiders. So to move post-conflict societies to peace requires a coalition of both insiders and outsiders. And who are outsiders typically? Some of the outsiders that many of us may be familiar with would be the United Nations and each of its agencies. It could be states connected with the conflict. It could be what we call states of goodwill, like the Scandinavian countries, who play a role in wanting to promote peace. It could be NGOs, right? All of these are outsiders. And then we talk in week 3 about conflict transformation tasks. What could these tasks be? One is they could be about helping refugees to return. They could be about helping to rebuild and reconstruct the education and health sectors. In more recent times, you would have seen in the Syrian conflict how a number of hospitals and health facilities have been affected by war. You would have seen in Afghanistan how schools were affected by the war, and how now there's a huge attempt to rebuild schooling in the Afghani context, and how to rebuild health facilities in parts of the Syrian context. Conflict transformation tasks are also about what we spoke about earlier. One, DDR, disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration. Also about SSR, which is security sector reform, from defense and the military to the police to the intelligence services. All of this make up, security sector reform. We also talk in week 3 about conflict transformation, inside outsider linkages, and spoilers. In many post conflict countries, we have people that we refer to as spoilers, people who are unwilling to end their participation in war, either because of ideology or some sort of conditioning, or also because a number of people profit from war and their profiteering would end as a result of peace returning. We also know that we have what we call connectors, and in some ways, you can think about connectors as being the opposite of spoilers. People who see a link between their work and what is happening on the ground, people who want to promote peace, and they could be activists, sports people, musicians, artists, all of these are what we call connectors. That's in essence what week 3 covers. One or two other points. You would have seen an email from Professor Bruce Dayton earlier today talking about the fact that your trip to South Africa is still on for November at this stage. Of course, we are monitoring the situation around COVID-19. South Africa is not doing well in terms of its number of infections. It's predicted to reach peak soon, and we're hoping at this point that you would be able to travel by November. We would meet in the coming days to talk about it and let you know of the decision that we've come to. But right now, the trip in November to South Africa is on the cards. If you have not visited South Africa previously, uh, it would be a great trip. South Africa is regarded as a miracle country in terms of how it overcame the conflict, how it overcame decades and decades of racial capitalism. It's a country still beset by a number of problems, but it's been able to move on from years of apartheid and separate development to building a cohesive country. And it's a fascinating country, sociopolitically, culturally, and in a range of other ways. So I am hoping that you get to visit South Africa in November. We have a number of really interesting visits planned for you. And if that trip works out in November, I think it would be hugely beneficial, not only to understanding peace and conflict, but just in terms of understanding this country broadly. Thank you very much. Feel free to email, and I'm hoping that our synchronous session, I know one or two of you have raised concerns about 10 a.m. Eastern Time on August 10th, that it conflicts with some of your work meetings. I'm hoping that 11 a.m. Eastern Time works. I would post that on the group shortly. I would suggest 11 a.m. Eastern Time on August the 10th, but I'm happy to hear your comments. Thank you very much, and good luck with your work for week 3.